That's better. Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of So You Want to Learn Sundays. This is episode 2 in my series of the basics of Premiere Pro. I hope that made sense to any of you. Today we're talking about setting up a project. This probably should have been episode 1, but I got a bit ahead of myself. So we're taking a step back and we're going to jump into how to set up a project. Let's do it. Alright guys, so when you open Premiere, you're going to be met with this home screen with a whole bunch of options. Here's a whole bunch of previous projects that I've made edits to or I've opened for one reason or another. But when you first open, the one you're going to be really looking for is right up here. You've got new project or open project. So if you go ahead and click new project, it brings up the new project window with all of these options and all of these options and all of these options. So today we're going to be focusing on general and scratch disks and then setting up your workflow once you've got past this screen. But don't panic, I know it looks like a lot, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So first off, in the general tab, you've got name. Obviously this is going to be the name of your project, so I'm going to call this one test project. Then you've got your location. Now this is where the project files are going to be saved. So in my case, I'm going to hit browse and I'm going to go to my desktop, and I've made a test project folder. I'm going to select that folder. So that's now telling Premiere that I want to save this to my C drive on my desktop in the folder called test project. So next up, you've got your video rendering and playback. So you'll probably have a couple of options for the renderer. If your computer has a separate graphics card, you're going to have this CUDA GPU option, or you're going to have the software only option if you don't have that. If the only option you have is software only, then you're going to have to go ahead and use that. But 9 times out of 10, you want to be using the GPU acceleration because that's going to use your graphics card to render things much quicker and more efficiently. Next up is the display format for video. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be working in timecode if you're just making a video for YouTube. But if you're working in film, you can use feet and frames for 16mm film or for 35mm film, or you can also view in frames, but we're going to be sticking with timecode for our purposes today. Next up is the audio display format. Again, this gives you the option of audio samples or milliseconds. If you're doing really intensive audio work, kind of nitpicky stuff, you're going to want to go ahead and use milliseconds. But if you're just editing video and using Premiere Pro for that purpose, like most of you will be, you're going to want to go ahead and just leave it on audio samples. Next up is the capture format, and this only really applies if you're using old HDV or DV tapes. If you're importing video that way, then you're going to want to go ahead and either use the standard definition for DV or the high definition for DV. But if you're using a regular kind of SD card camera setup, then this is a fairly redundant option. But I understand why it's still in there because some people obviously do still use these formats, so you can go ahead and ignore that one. Next up is the scratch disks, and this basically tells Premiere where to save all of the additional files it needs to run this project. So pretty much all of these options are going to be staying on same as project like they're on now, but obviously if you're working on something that you're saving to a central server, but you're working on a version on your desktop or from somewhere else, then you're going to want to go ahead and change these to a custom file location. But they're pretty self-explanatory. So for example, captured video is just the video that the project is currently using. Captured audio is the audio that the project's currently using, and all that kind of stuff. The only one that you really want to focus on here is making sure that your project autosave is set somewhere sensible so you can go back and get to it if you need to, because Premiere is prone to crashing. Especially since the most recent update. I see a lot of people on Twitter complaining that it does crash on them quite frequently, so make sure you take note of where that path is, but for now we're going to be leaving all of these on same as project. The last thing to note is to make sure that you have enough space in the drive where you're saving this for the project. Hopefully you're not working on anything that's 42.8 gigs, but if you are, or if I was in this instance, I'd have to save this somewhere else because there wouldn't be enough space on this particular file path to save it. So once you're done and you're happy, all you got to do is go ahead and click OK, and that's going to load up your project. Once you've got your project open, you're going to want to go ahead and import your footage. So in the test project folder, I've dumped a load of footage from a previous video, so I'm going to go ahead and just click and drag this into where it says import media to start. And that's just going to copy across all of my files. It might take a bit of time because there was quite a lot of files in the folder, so I'm just going to let this do its thing and then we'll come back. Okay, so we've got our folder with all of our clips in, and what we want to do now is generate a sequence to start cutting these clips together. So what I tend to do is just down here, I'll click on new bin and I'll title this bin sequences. And then if I select it and click on the new item button, I can go ahead and click sequence. And that's going to bring up all of these options for presets for my sequence. Obviously I'm working in DSLR 1080p 25 because I shoot in 25 frames a second. If you're shooting in 24 frames a second, then you want to pick 24. If you're shooting in 30 frames a second, then you want to shoot 30, and obviously respectively of 1080p, 720p, 480p. Basically find your preset in this list, go ahead, click on it. Then you want to give your sequence a name. So I'm going to call this one test sequence, and then hit OK. And that generates the sequence down here for us to start cutting. And from there, you're pretty much set to go. I'm going to be covering workflow more so in the next episode. That's something I want to touch on because I feel like it's something that's really important, especially if you're going to shoot vlogs or something of that nature, where time is very much a sensitive, precious commodity, as it were, when it comes to editing. And that's pretty much all there is to setting up a new project in Premiere Pro, guys. I did have a look online, but the only versions of this kind of information I could really find were back from like 2015, and I know they've moved a few things around, they've updated a few things, and some of the buttons look different. And I do know that it can be quite daunting when you first dive into it. So I really hope you guys learned something from this. If you did, be sure to hit the like button because it really helps me out more than you would think. Leave me some comments and let me know how you're getting on with Premiere, if there's anything specific you want me to cover. Like I said, I am going to be covering more about workflow and kind of, we're going to be going in like the logical steps of building up a project in Premiere Pro. So be sure to stick around. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and take it easy, guys, and I will catch you on Tuesday with a regularly scheduled vlog. Peace!